Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Locker Room 411 with the HJCAC. This morning, I have the privilege of being joined by Doug Madoski. My name is Brett Quintyne, and you know, Coach, we're going to just jump right into it. So much to talk about in such a little bit of time. The first thing I'll ask you is, how are you, my man? The last time I saw you, we were amongst a lot of high school kids at a tournament, but this is about college football, though.
Absolutely. I'm good. I appreciate you having me in here and the chance to sit down and talk with you a little bit about the HJCAC and what we're doing.
You guys, you've had a busy summer. You really have. You're all over the place. You're one of the executive directors of the HJCAC. Before we go into what some of those details are about, just kind of tell us what you've been up to from, let's say, June and July and now into August. You've got a lot of I's to dot, T's to cross, and players to bring on board.
Well, I think when you look at it from the HJCAC's perspective solely, I mean, it is busy. And I think that anytime that you're establishing a football league at the community college level with 5 different teams, I mean, there's a lot of entities that go into place there when you're looking at things from a facility standpoint. Obviously, recruiting players, trying to make sure that you've got the relationships built to be able to start sending players onto the 4-year level and making sure that academics are squared away. I mean, it's busy. There's no question.
Absolutely. How did you and Coach Steve meet? You guys have been part of this league essentially from the inception. You guys are the starters. If you could give us some of the origin, because as we know, a handful of years ago, junior college football within the state of Arizona was sort of dissolved, but you and Coach Weiss, you've sort of taken it upon yourselves and resurrected that into something that's very palatable.
Yeah, so I mean, Coach Weiss and I, we met a few years back, obviously. He coached me at Scottsdale Community College and just kind of wanted to get into
the artichokes.
He wanted to get into football coaching, and I had been at Scottsdale, I guess, 13 years as the head coach, and he had approached me about, seeing if I could help him with that. And what became obvious is that he was pretty passionate about doing it, was a guy that was willing to go out and work and recruit and do the things that we needed, and I needed another guy to help me within the staff to be able to take over a position for me so that I could be free to, call the defense and just deal with things from the head coach perspective. So ended up hiring him to come coach the defensive line position for me and assist me with that for, I think, a couple of years prior to the decision to get rid of athletics, football specific in Maricopa. And so I was at Scottsdale for 13 years as the head football coach. My background, though, I was a community college football player out of California. I was one course short of qualifying out of high school and had to take the community college route. And I've long shared with people that if it hadn't been for community college, I mean, it saved my life. There's no question that my life is what it is because of a coach then taking a shot on a guy that thought he was probably better than he was, and putting his arm around me when I needed somebody to, and kicking me in the butt when he needed to do that. But so when Maricopa made that decision to get rid of community college football, I looked at it from not just the guys that we had impacted in that 13-year time period at Scottsdale specifically, but I also looked at it personally from the standpoint of if that opportunity wasn't there for me, where would I ultimately be? So we went out and we started to look to secure sponsors to be able to fund the league through Maricopa. We thought that there was going to be some appetite for that just based on some discussions with administrators at the college. And when it became obvious that there was no appetite for that, I had actually approached Steve about, what if we just come up with something? I mean, why can't we figure this out? And I think you always think you can do it until you're actually sitting there doing it. And, so we started it that way. It started at a real, grassroots level of just dialogue and conversation about getting it up and going. And we didn't want to make any decisions as far as recruiting players for it until we knew that we were going to be in a position financially to secure equipment and facilities. And once we were able to do all of those things, we had about a 30-day lead time to the first inaugural season, and we went out and recruited, and we put a football season together at least. I mean, was it as the best it could be? No, it's still getting better. I mean, that's something that when we talk about what do we do in the off season, I mean, it's constantly working to try to improve.
There is no off season for you.
There is no off season.
There might be a time where games are played, but there is no off season. What have been some of the biggest obstacles for you over this is year 4 or year 3?
Year 4.
Year 4. You obviously got the season off and running in year one, and it's gotten bigger and better each year. What have been some of the challenges along the way?
Well, I think that obviously just starting from scratch. I mean, as they say, you don't know what you don't know until you start getting into it.
That's for sure.
I think as a head coach, I always believed, how hard can it really be to be an administrator overseeing an athletics department or anything like that? I think everybody has the belief that they could do it until you're sitting in that chair and you're in a position to actually have to think about things like facilities and officials and creating a game schedule even, or other coaches that you have to hire and bring on board to pull something of this magnitude off. But you go after that first year, and instantly you get into the COVID season. How do you navigate the waters of COVID? And everybody at that point had made the decision that they weren't sure that they were going to be playing from a high school standpoint locally. When we actually came out and put a press release out that said that we were in fact going to play, and we tried to model ourselves and talk with different health officials in different states and see kind of how some other entities were going to go about approaching that season.
Because you're right, what Utah did was different than, say, what New Mexico did, which is different than California. So no, you're absolutely right with the neighboring states.
So we dove into all of that to try to figure out how can we do this, but do this in a safe manner. When we felt like we were in a position to do so, we made that announcement that we were going to. Shortly thereafter, I think the AIA came out and said that the majority of their leagues or their schools were going to continue to play. So obviously you have the COVID year of 2020, I guess now that was a nightmare in itself. So it doesn't seem like there's been a single season where you've rolled into the season without having an obstacle somewhere sitting out there.
You are a busy guy. Not only are you the coach of the Maricopa Mustangs, but also the Mountain Ridge Mountain Lions. So your Friday nights and your Saturday nights are, to the outside world, non-existent. You've got a lot going on. Take us through, I'm going to say, a typical day. And again, in sports, there really is no typical day, and that's the beauty of it. But what's a day like for you, let's say tomorrow? Tomorrow being a Thursday.
Tomorrow being a Thursday. So Mountain Ridge will practice tomorrow morning. We'll be on the field by 5:15, so I'll be at the school, showered, ready to go by about 4:30 in the morning.
You have early morning high school practices.
So on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we will Mountain Ridge for right now. So I'll be at the school about 4:30 to get ready for practice from at least in the facility at that point. Prior to then, we'll have had to get film uploaded, watched from the coaching staff standpoint, rolling from Wednesday night's practice that we'll have tonight. Practice plans typed up, ready to go, and then obviously they're early for practice to start on time at 5:15. We'll finish that by about 7:30 in the morning. Go home, shower real quick, head to the office, work on league-related matters for most of the day until 3 o'clock, when we'll head back over to Mountain Ridge for the Maricopa Mustangs meetings at 3, and then on the field by 3:45 to start pre-practice for a 4 o'clock practice. That'll stack to, it just keeps going.
Wow, folks. Just wow. That's, you talk about two-a-days. You have two-a-days every day on certain levels. From a coaching standpoint, and certainly I don't want you to give away any secrets, is your offense or defense or your coaching styles similar for high school and college? Do you have that same? Obviously, you have a different talent level at Maricopa than you do with Mountain Ridge.
I think that in some aspects, yes. I think that you take some of the infant level stuff that we'll do from the schematically that we could do with the high schools where you don't have the ability to go out and recruit your own players to do things, and we'll install some of those concepts and scheme aspects to it, what we're doing. But then obviously at the college level where you can, you have an idea, you want to do something, that you can actually go out and recruit that player to do it for you, that you may not have that talent level or that talent base at the school specifically. And what's unique is you may not have it this season, but next season you might have.
Sure, very true.
So it's one of those things where I think you're constantly evolving and trying to figure out a way to mesh the two in some respects, but yet to keep the two, separate as well.
The word recruiting has a lot of negative connotations. Sometimes it really does. But that's what football is all about, as long as it's done the right way. Looking for talent really all over the neighborhood, all over the state, and at the college level, all over the country. More so in specific at the college level with what you're doing. Tell us about how you recruit, and more so when. Are there certain times, like say with the NCAA, where it's kind of a hands-off, or you can just text with guys. Tell us about kind of recruiting.
So at the community college level, you can recruit year round. I mean, there's one dead period that the NJCAA has that is the week heading up, or the Sunday night at midnight heading into signing day, or that first Wednesday in February signing day. Outside of that, you can recruit year round. It's not an issue not being able to do so. And for us, it's about constantly trying to develop relationships with high school coaches here locally first and foremost. We feel like we want to. The HJCAC needs to be built with some local kids. Certainly, I mean, that's the goal of it, is to make sure that we're taking care of this community. That doesn't mean that we're not going to go out just like we were in the Maricopa schools and bring in out-of-state kids that have a desire to play. We just know that it's easier, quite honestly, to recruit a local kid, but there's also a lot more competition out here to recruit a local kid between the Arizona Christian and Ottawa University programs that are now up and playing, and then obviously when you throw in there all the other Division I's and 1AA schools across the country, and I mean, it's, as more teams at that 4-year level have added programs, it's taken a relatively large population in Arizona, but it's dispersed it a lot, and now we're obviously competing with other community colleges that are more traditional than what it is that we're doing, and trying to make sure that we get our name out there, take care of those kids, so that we can keep grabbing a hold of some of these kids coming out of high school, so they're not paying ungodly amounts of money to go to California or Kansas or somewhere else to try to do this.
On a typical roster, and we'll talk about the team names next and just kind of a little bit about the other 4 teams. We know that you're with the Mustangs. On a typical roster, A, how many kids are on a typical roster of these 5 teams? And B, what's the rough ratio between Arizona kids and non-Arizona kids?
I think that, so when we started the league, we started it with the idea of having 80-person rosters. So everybody's striving to get to that 80, and we've gotten closer and closer to that number as a league over the last 3 seasons. When you start looking in-state or out-of-state, it fluctuates, and it really starts to fluctuate the more that we can get the high school coaches locally bought into what it is that we're doing, and having those kids understand that there is another viable option with our partnership with Snow College and the ability for them to go to other schools as well, that there's a viable option for their kids to still stay home, and we're still moving kids on. As that word gets out and spreads more, I think those roster numbers will come up as far as the local kids go. Right now, I'm going to say they're probably 65-70% out of state for the most part. We try to get it down to about that 50% range, which is what we were for
because ideally 50-50 would be.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where we were for most of Maricopa. I mean, I want to say that we were probably, at Scottsdale, we may have been a little more local than out of state, but you're still probably sitting at that 65% local and 35% out of state. Obviously, if we can get back to those kind of numbers, then we feel like we're going to be pretty successful.
Clue us into the other 4 teams in the league. You guys, you being the Maricopa Mustangs, play your home games at Mountain Ridge High School. Tell us about the other 4 teams and where they're located and their team names.
So you got the Gila River Hawks that are playing at Campo Verde High School. And Coach Mike Denny is the head football coach of that program now. You've got the Papago Pumas that are playing at Dobson High School with Brandon Payne as the head coach. And Brandon, he had coached for me the first year of the league, and then immediately, obviously he was from Ottawa, did a great job for us, and we've immediately promoted him up to a head coaching position and has done a great job with the Papago Pumas. Larry Davis, who is with the Salt River Scorpions now, they're out of South Mountain High School for this season coming up. This will be their first year playing games at South Mountain High School. But he's there new this year, working with the Salt River Scorpions. And then you have Hal Reeser, who's down in Tucson, playing out of Santa Rita High School. And Hal was a guy that coached in the NJCAA last year. We brought him in to fill a head coaching position down with that team in Tucson.
The eligibility for the players, how does that run? They've graduated high school. Do they have 2 years with you? Is that what it is? Kind of tell us about the eligibility factor.
So we still follow the same requirements as the NJCAA does from that standpoint. So they've got to be enrolled full-time, and so they're taking 12 credit hours or more. And they've got to pass those classes with a 2.0 or higher GPA. We do have a policy in place now, an academic performance policy, where you've got to continue to maintain your grades throughout the course of the season, that if you get Fs in your courses, you're not going to be able to play the game on a Saturday. At the end of the day, we started this league with with the vision to create opportunities for guys to be able to move on to that next level. And for us, if they're not going to school and they're not taking care of the academic end of it, we know we can't get them a scholarship because they're not going to be able to get into another school. So we require they take minimum of 12 credit hours, and you've got to pass them with a 2.0 or higher, 2.5 if you want to play Division I college football.
That's right.
We monitor grades weekly. I mean, it's one of those deals where our kids are going to school, they're passing classes, they're going to do the things the right way in order for them to have the best opportunity later on.
And one of the gentlemen who I believe you mentioned, his name escapes me. I think he's got a scholarship to Jackson State next year, or this upcoming season. He was with you guys last year.
So Cole Cousatrone is at Jackson State playing for Deion Sanders. We have another kid, Giovanni Bourbon, who's a kid, kind of a unique success story at Buena High School down in southern Arizona. Came in here as a quarterback and defensive back to the Mustangs, and we moved him to teach him how to long snap.
Okay.
And he ended up being a long snapper for us last year, received a full scholarship to be a long snapper at SMU. Actually just got an NIL deal where part of that team where everybody gets the same $27,000 or $30,000, whatever it is. So he's a kid that came from the league, is obviously pursuing his Division I dream at a position that he hadn't anticipated playing.
Sure.
But is doing relatively well. I mean, he's successful. He's on scholarship. He's going to school. He's going to get his bachelor's degree when it's all said and done.
That long snapper position it's vital, and we can talk X's and O's at another point, but it's one of those things where if you can master that position, you can earn a scholarship because kids in the schoolyard, on high school teams, they don't desire to be long snappers, but special teams is essentially 1 out of every 3 plays over the course of your 3-hour contest. If you can do the right thing as a long snapper, you can go places.
There's no question. I mean, we had great success with the specialist positions at Scottsdale. We really recruited that position. And so for us, our kickers, punters, and long snappers have always had great opportunities when they've left us. We try to find the best ones we can, make them a little bit better if we can do so, and certainly, we're known for being able to send those guys on.
Expansion, is that something that could happen, maybe not, something you guys are looking into the future? There's 5 teams now. Tell us kind of the vision for the future, whether it's team numbers or whether it's anything that you guys would love to improve.
I think that obviously expansion sits out there with more and more programs shutting down, football programs at that community college level. I think that this really could be the way of the future for community college football and for an existence of community college football across the country, not just in Arizona. So certainly we've looked at different areas and we've been approached by different states to take the same model that we're working here and bring it to their state and do something similar to what we're doing here. At the same time, we feel like we need to perfect the model here. While it's still a smaller sample size, it's easier for us to keep working through some of those kinks. But when you start looking at numbers of teams, certainly 6 teams insulates our schedule and gives us a full 10-game schedule. Sitting at 5, we're guaranteed 8 because we do what Maricopa had done and we play each other twice. So right now we play each other twice for 8 games. Then we have relationships with Snow College and New Mexico Military Institute where some of those teams will go out and play them. We play Arizona Christian University's JV program. So we build the schedule out that way, but certainly 6 teams in a conference put you in a spot where you're at least insulated at 10, and then you could pick up that extra game or 2 for some of these guys to get to 11 games.
At the beginning of our interview, you mentioned something that I think really resonates with a lot of high school seniors and young men in particular. Junior college football saved your life.
It did.
Kind of elaborate on whether it's specifics or just the idea of being able to be, I'm going to say, taken in, but still being able to compete in something you love, even though it may not be at the elite status that kids dream of.
Yeah, I think that like for me personally, it was a matter of I'm from a smaller town in California, and I was a big fish in a small pond, and probably making some questionable at best decisions. But as I've shared with our players, with the Mustangs, and when I was at Scottsdale, that the single best bet you can make in life is on yourself. And if you truly believe in what it is that you is your passion, your purpose, and you're willing to go out there and actually put the work in for it, there's nobody that could stop you from achieving those goals. So when I say it saved my life, I mean, I think that it did save my life. I think that, you have a population of person who has thought for a long time they're not smart enough to go to college. They're never going to graduate from college. Everybody's got obstacles that sit out there. And this becomes another way for you to continue to bet on yourself and to get that education and to get a bachelor's degree or progress it to a master's degree or a doctorate degree. But, I mean, I've just seen so many kids that have gone this route that at one point college seemed unattainable to them that are able to do it without spending a ton of money, without going into $100,000 plus in student loan debt. I mean, they're able to do this affordably. If you're on a Pell Grant, you don't have to take a loan out to be able to do this, and you still get that opportunity when it's all said and done.
7 o'clock games moving forward. I believe first game is August 27th. Kind of tell us about the makeup of the schedule, because I think you guys have the full slate September Labor Day weekend, but you guys have out-of-state games on the 27th.
Yeah, so Coach Payne will take the Papago Pumas back over to New Mexico Military Institute on the 27th. They played last year. Coach Payne actually played at New Mexico Military Institute at one point before heading over to the University of New Mexico. So he's going to take them back over there. They gave those guys who were the national champions last year for the HJCAC a heck of a run. If they'd been able to snap the ball, if they had our long snapper, I talked with Coach Struthers, the defensive coordinator. I said, I think if you guys had our long snapper last year, you guys might have beat them. So he's going to go back there again this year and take another crack at him on the 27th. And then on the 3rd, the rest of the league will roll out and play games locally.
We're definitely looking forward to it, and it all culminates November 12th or 19th, I believe it is.
The 12th.
Outstanding. It has been so great talking to you. This is just the first of essentially a weekly edition, and we're not going to bug you, Coach, to come in each and every week. You've got other coaches and numerous players that we want to help spotlight, but hopefully next week we can have you and Coach Weiss in and kind of help us kick off the season, and then we will start to gradually get deeper and deeper into the teams and players and numbers and names, because that's the big thing. We want name recognition, obviously, not just for the league, of course, but for the players. We want to hear about the John Doe. Oh, wow, he was at Maricopa. Oh, wow, now he's at New Mexico State or wherever it may be. That's the big thing, folks. So this is Doug Madoski. He is the executive director of the HJCAC, which stands for
Hohokam Junior College Athletic Conference.
Outstanding. I'm Brett Quintyne. We'll see you guys next week on the Locker Room 411 with the HJCAC.